Hey everyone, Matt here from Tyke. This week, I sat down with Emma Campbell, who is a UX designer here at Tyke, to talk about our 3.0 release and the UX updates that are applicable to it. Specifically, in this chat, we talked about policies and the changes to the UX in the Tyke dashboard. Without further ado, I will hand you over to Emma to give you a very, very brief overview of these changes.
Hey everyone, as Matt has mentioned, I'm one of the UX designers here at Type. We're pretty excited because this release is one of the first that's incorporated a design thinking process into two of our user journeys, the policy and key creation and management. We're striving to create an optimized experience for you so that you can work faster and smarter. So the first thing you'll notice is our new colors, look and feel. The design team has made changes to our visual branding to better express our love for creativity and to show how much we've grown in the last few years. These changes start with our website, and as you can see, we're also incorporating them into the UI of our products. We're doing this to keep our brand consistent, but most importantly because we believe that this is going to enhance your experience with Type. So as you can see, we've given the policy management table a bit of a facelift. Previously, we were displaying only the policy name and ID, but now you'll also see the policy state, as well as the access rights and the authentication type. You're also going to be able to filter your policy management table by access rights or even by authentication type. This means that you're going to be able to locate a specific policy much faster and have a more informative overview of all of your policies. So now let's go ahead and add a new policy. Now, I can hear you saying, this is looking different. And you're right, we've separated the policy information into two tabs. So we've got access rights here and configurations. We're also asking you to set your access rights first. So for policy creation, we understood that there was often a struggle to locate the correct API. So we've given you more visibility. Along with searching by the API name, you can now filter by authentication type. So let's add in our first API. Now, if we're going to be adding a second API, the access rights list is automatically filtering to show only API with compatible authentication types. So because our first API here has been OAuth 2.0, it means that now we're locked into OAuth 2.0 and auth token. So this means that you're not going to be doing any unnecessary errors in creating your policy. All right, now if we take a look at the access rights that we've just added, we can see that to make viewing and editing your policy more straightforward, we're now grouping all actions within each API. This means that when you need to edit your policy, you're able to locate and make changes to the specific API belonging to that policy. So now, where do I set my rate limiting, throttling, and usage quota? That's at the top here in the global limits and quota panel. So if we click on that, this is where you'll be able to set all of those things. Now the neat trick we've done is that before you had to rate -1 to disable each of these. So now we've got a neat little checkbox here, so you're able to just uncheck and recheck. You can also set your policy partitioning here as well. Previously, the setup for partitioning a policy consisted of double negatives that were often quite confusing. So we've fixed this by having enforce access rights, enforce usage quota, and enforce rate limits selected by default. So now if you want to partition a policy, it's clear what the key overrides will be. So for example, if we uncheck enforce rate limit, it means that the rate limiting will no longer be enforced and therefore able to be overridden at key level. So how can I set my per API limits and quota then? So now if we go into the API, you can see here that there's a set per API limits and quota. We can just toggle that on. You'll get a message saying, are you sure you want to disable partitioning for this policy? So that's just really to make you aware that you can either partition the policy or you can set per API limits and quota within the policy. You can't do both. So we hit confirm, and now we've got the exact same information that we had before, except that when we set it here, it's only going to be affecting loyalty program and not search as well. As you can see, there's also been a small tag that's been added called per API. So it just means that when you're looking at your list of access rights, you can clearly see which ones are being defined by the global limits and quota and which have the per API limits and quota set. If we click back into here and we can remove the per API limits and quota, as you can see, the little tag is gone and now all of the API in this policy are inheriting from the global limits and quota. So you can also see we've got the API versions here. So that means whenever you add an API, you can select the versions that it has, depending on if it does have multiple versions. And that just means that you're giving access to a specific version rather than all versions of the API. You can also come in and here we've got the path-based permissions, so you can toggle that switch on. Now you can either enter custom regex or you can select an endpoint. So what I've done is I've defined an endpoint in my API. So when I click on to here, I can actually pre-select one of my defined endpoints already, and it already has the method attached to it, and I can just add that straight in. So that means now that I've given access to that particular path. If I want to, I can then just untoggle, and now the path-based permissions have been turned off. So the next thing to do is we need to name our policy. So we can come into the configurations tab here and we can give it a name, loyalty open. Now the other big change is under settings here, we've got policy state. So before we used to have two options. One was called make your policy active or deny access to the policy. So we've combined these two into this one called policy state. So there are three different policy states. We've got active, which is all keys are active and new keys can be created. We've got draft, where all keys are active but no new keys can be created. And then we've got access denied, which means all keys are deactivated and no keys can be created from this policy. So that kind of gives you a really clear picture over what each of those does. And in here you can also set when the key should expire, the tags and the metadata, as you could already do before. And now when we create the policy, we get over to the main policy screen. So we can come here, we can see exactly what policy we're editing, we can get the policy ID, and then we can also make the specific changes that we need to, or even rename or add tags, metadata. And then we can just head back with the breadcrumb back to the main policy table.
Well, thanks a lot for covering this, Emma. I'm sure users are going to be really excited to start playing around with this. Until next time, thanks for joining us.